Rock Talk.
All right, we are Grok Talk. Thank you for tuning into the live stream, to Ustream, to YouTube, to iHeart, to TuneIn, to Spreaker, to Stitcher. All those great places. Check out our page at patreon.com, patreon.com/Grok Talk. Make a donation and a regular donation to support the program. Software upgrades, equipment. We don't pay ourselves. It's all about keeping the show on the air. And part of keeping that show on the air is having guests like the gentleman we are currently speaking to, Lawrence McQuillion, talking about pensions and the downward spiral into bankruptcy. And Max, who's a state rep, had a question for you, sir. Hang on, let me turn his microphone on.
The drunk driving cop who I defeated in November for my position as state representative, after he smashed into a parked Kia and destroyed it, hit it so hard that he rammed it into a parked pickup truck and sent both drivers to the hospital with injuries. He threw his badge on the seat and walked away from the crime scene. And instead of getting any jail time, he was forced into early retirement. But he gets to draw a $6,000 a month pension for life, plus the Cadillac medical plan, plus full dental, job training, college, everything. People hear about this kind of thing, and they're saying, well, who's paying for it? And ultimately, it's the taxpayer pays for it. I think, what was the figure a couple of years ago?
Hang on, Lawrence, can you hear us? I think we've somehow lost a connection. Hold on a second.
Hello?
Are you there?
Yeah.
Can you hear us? He can't hear us. What happened?
Uh-oh.
We have a technical problem. Skip's going to work on it. Yeah, we can hear the guest, but he can't hear us, and I don't know why. How about that? Can you hear us now? Hello?
I can.
Oh, there you go. Sorry. Yeah, we're good. We're good. I'm sorry.
So what is the nationwide total? I read a few years ago that it was $5 or $6 trillion in unfunded pension liabilities nationwide for state and local public employees. Do you know what the figure is now?
Yeah, well, you'd be right. It's the latest figure is $4.7 trillion. That's with a T. $4.7 trillion nationally, and as you mentioned, I mean, some states are worse than others. Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Texas, and California, for example, have really bad unfunded public pension debt. But most states have unfunded debt to some extent, and on average, overall, the states are only about 40% funded.
So what is that, about $14,000 for every man, woman, and child in the country?
Right, yeah. And keep in mind that's money that should be in the bank today, earning compounded interest over time to make sure that there's enough money in the pot when people retire. And so that money should be in there today, and it isn't. And now, as I mentioned, I mean, politicians have been robbing other accounts and putting that money in the pensions, trying to make this work, but it's not working.
So what's the path to resolve this problem? What are our options? I'm sure you explore them in your book in detail, because obviously there's no point in writing about it unless you have an idea about how we can fix it.
Well, the most important change that needs to be made is for state and local governments to transition over to 401k pensions, because they're much more transparent, they're more affordable, they're always fully funded. There's never an unfunded liability that taxpayers have to make up. And it's also very easy to show that in most cases the employee comes out better than they do under the old-fashioned defined benefit plan, and that's because those plans made more sense when people stayed with the same employer for 30, 40 years, because they're backloaded in terms of the benefits. But let's face it, I mean, most people today don't want to work for the same place for 40 years like my dad did. They like flexibility. They're just a much more mobile workforce. And the beauty of a 401k is that, you own the account. It's your money. It's portable. If you change jobs, the money goes with you. So it's a much more modern way of providing retirement security than the old-fashioned defined benefit plans. But I show in my book, though, that for California, and this would work in other states, though, that if you would transition everybody into a 401k, you'd actually create the savings that you could use to pay down the accumulated debt. So if everybody was transitioned, all the public employees at the state level in California were transitioned to a 401k, the state would save more than $6 billion a year that they could then use to pay down the debt and pay for the benefits that have already been earned, and people are counting on that money being there. So we don't have to go the road of Detroit and actually cut checks and reduce checks for people who have already earned their benefits and are in retirement.
Yeah, you know, the unions fight tooth and nail, as they did in Detroit, claiming it was a constitutional matter that their pensions be preserved at all costs. And, you know, I say to them, it's a Pyrrhic victory. What you are guaranteeing for yourselves is 100% of nothing when the thing eventually goes bankrupt.
That's right.
Instead of getting maybe 90% of something if you convert it into a 401k.
That's true, yeah. And after the ruling in Detroit by the federal bankruptcy judge, and the ruling in Stockton, California, for the first time ever, in California, a federal bankruptcy judge ruled that a city in bankruptcy can reduce current pension checks. So now we got two court decisions saying the same thing. I think retirees should be very nervous that the money is going to be there when they need it, and that's why if they were to support what I'm recommending in the book, a transition to a 401k for new people, then it would, or for current workers, then it would guarantee that the money is going to be there for current retirees or people just about to retire. So I think it makes a lot of sense for current government retirees to back this proposal that I'm recommending, because that way the cities and counties would save the money they need going forward to pay for the promises already made and the benefits already earned. I mean, these people did the work. That was the agreement when they did the work. They've earned the benefits. They're now retired. So I think they should get that money. I think that's the moral position. But so how do we pay for it? And the best way to do it is to transition to a 401k, because then we'll generate the savings that we need to actually pay for these benefits that have been earned.
Lawrence, is there any? I have one friend in particular who I always think about, who worked for the police. He worked for the FBI. He worked really hard. He worked in a dangerous job. And by the time he was like 45 or 50 years old, he retired on a full pension. He then went and got a security job making more than I make. And he's going to collect that pension for the next however long he lives. Is there any move in California or any other state to try to get the unions to realign these contracts so that maybe they can retire and go get another job, but that they can't collect until they're older? Because, collecting that kind of a pension for 20 or 30 years is killing people. Everybody else, not the
Yeah. Well, there were reforms 3 years ago, 2012, that were passed in California that reduced or kind of eliminated some of the tricks that were used to hike pension benefits. So, for example, pension spiking, it's called, where you would work in unpaid overtime, unpaid vacation that you had on account, and then you'd work that into your final compensation, because final compensation is used to determine your pension benefit. So there was a lot of shenanigans like that where people would save up all their unused vacation and then cash it in at the bitter end, and then that would really spike up their pensions, sometimes to the point where they would actually make a higher pension in retirement than their final salary that they made while they were working. So there was a lot of that, and that's been reined in somewhat. But the problem is that things like that, I mean, you can save a little bit of money like that would save between $75 and $80 billion a year, the things that they passed in 2012. But we're facing a $750 billion unfunded pension debt. So it helps. It gets you about 10% of the savings, but it doesn't get you where you need to be. And that's the problem with pensions, is that it's really it's like trying to change the direction of a blimp. You turn the wheel, and about 6 miles down the road, it starts to move. And that's kind of with pensions, because whatever changes you made have to work through the system for 20, 30, 40 years until people start retiring. So you really don't see the benefit until way out in terms of the savings. So in order to get really significant structural savings, you got to make an important, significant change to the pension plans, and that's the shift to a 401k. That's the only thing that really generates the savings that you need in order to bring these costs in control, these costs going forward, and also have the money that we need to pay down the debt without cutting, services even more. At least that would kind of hold the line on services too, which, in the blue state is very popular. So I think that makes the most sense. And again, part of this will be on a ballot initiative, hopefully, in 2016 in California. And the other aspect of this ballot initiative in 2016 that's being proposed is to have voters have the final say for any benefit increases going forward. So politicians can't do what they did in the past. So if they want to increase pension benefits going forward, they need to get the approval of voters. And other regions of the country that have this check on politicians, they've avoided some of the major problems with their pension funds that we've seen in other parts of the country. So I think that would be a really significant reform, is to allow voters to have the final say. I mean, it seems only fair, right? I mean, they're going to have to pick up the bill eventually, so they should be able to have the final say in what the financial obligations will be.
Yeah, isn't this actually a problem from the micro to the macro level, meaning it happens in the small towns, our local towns, and it happens, of course, at the national level with Social Security. If we don't convert this from a defined benefit into a defined contribution plan, where the money is explicitly vested for the owner, we're going to have this problem writ very, very large indeed.
We actually don't have time for you to answer that. We're running out of time, and I want people to know where they can go to get your book.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, California Dreaming is the title, and it's available on Amazon and also our website, which is independent.org.
Well, thank you so much for taking some of your Saturday morning to talk to us.
We really
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. You have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye. All right. That's this week's show. We want to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to check us out on iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, TuneIn, and Stitcher. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and please visit patreon.com/GrokTalk to support the program. We will see you next week with more news, more conversation, more Grok Talk.